Thank you for joining us for the Red Oaks Glen Heights PACE presentation. Excited to have you here with us today. I am Dr. Teresa Smith. I am with the Texas PACE Authority and I oversee transactions. We also have with us as a speaker Dr. Valerie Shoup, and she is one of our premier service providers and is going to be talking throughout the presentation on the energy audit ITPR side of the conversation. So without any further delay, I'm going to open up my presentation and share my screen, and we will get started. As a note, if you have questions as we present, please drop them into the chat, and from there we will be able to, at the end, have some time where we can directly respond to any inquiries that you have. So let me get my presentation queued up here, and we will get this started. The first thing we're going to have is a welcoming video, and I'm going to start that for us here.
Hello, and welcome to the Texas PACE Authority webinar, hosted in partnership with the Red Oak Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Clint Woodward, and I have been the president and CEO of the Red Oak Area since 2019. Our chamber is the official chamber for both the cities of Red Oak and Glen Heights. Plus, we have members throughout 19 different municipalities all around us, totaling well over 200 members. 2 years ago, we hosted our first Texas PACE Authority presentation. We are delighted to participate again this year with them. No, this is not just another lending program. Texas PACE Authority is a program that above all can help you and your business save money, both with favorable funding opportunities as well as long-term energy savings, all while getting you the capital you need to grow your business. As you go through this presentation, you will learn how easy it is and why this program should be a key part of your future business plans. The Texas PACE Authority has had an incredible impact on our community. They have worked directly with some of our biggest employers, most notably Carbon Aerospace, for lighting improvements for their nearly 800,000 square foot manufacturing facility, as well as our state-of-the-art B&B theaters, which includes multiple energy saving features throughout their facility. Both the Red Oak Area Chamber and the Red Oak Economic Development Department have worked closely with the Texas PACE Authority to ensure our business community has the tools it needs to excel and stand out in the DFW region. Thank you again for attending this online event. We look forward to seeing exciting developments that our community will enjoy for years to come through this program.
Great. So that was a great kickoff, and we appreciate Cliff's support as we have continued to grow this program throughout the region. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about sort of an introduction to Texas PACE, give you a background, and share with you some very specifics on projects that we've been involved in. That's going to be the first half. So let's just start out with the very basics. What is Texas PACE? It stands for, technically, Texas Property Assessed Clean Energy, and it is an innovative financing tool that it provides long-term fixed rate financing, and it also allows for 100% of the qualified costs to be covered under this financing. It is a tool that's designed to complement conventional financing. It's really not intended as a direct replacement. It is designed to fill gaps or offer a better solution based on the needs of the project and the financing that they're looking for. So the things that the financing can cover have to be related to water conservation, energy efficiency, and distributed generation. So like solar, wind, geothermal, power generation type projects. Who can use this program? So pretty much every commercial building is eligible. We can do multifamily so long as it's more than 5 units. And we cannot do single family residence. That is a program that's not available in the state of Texas. This is commercial properties only. We can do industrial, manufacturing, agricultural, and we have a lot of special use projects that can also utilize this financing. So let's take a minute and talk about how PACE works. It's a very innovative tool. It was actually established in 2008 by the federal government. Once the federal government enabled the program, then the individual states had to choose whether or not they were going to offer the program or not. Texas enabled their program in 2013 and set it up. Now, once the state establishes it, then the individual municipalities, be it at a county or a city, chooses whether or not they want to develop a program. And so that's where we are in how the program gets started. It is a government established program, but it is not government money. It is not a grant. It is not funded by the government. It's really not a government program. What it technically is the government allowing private capital access to assessment securitization. And I'll get into that a little bit deeper down the path so you can understand that. But that's really what it is. The role of the government is to place the assessment onto the property. So that's the direct role. And Texas PACE Authority is a 501c3. We have been in operation for 10 years and we are an administrator of the program. So we sign a service contract with the local municipality and we become their service provider. And then as the arrows will show here, we interface with all of the other components of the PACE transaction. So you have the private capital providers, you have the property owners, and then you have the service providers. And that's the flow of how a transaction happens and who the players are in each transaction. These projects are typically financed by the private equity markets. There are some conventional banks who have become PACE lenders, and we would love to see more conventional banks become PACE lenders, but that's typically where the money comes from. So what can you use it for? There's three basic financing structures that you can use PACE under. So you can use it for a renovation or a repurposing. Typically what we're seeing on renovation projects would be like new MEP systems, building envelope, sealing up the exterior, anything that has to do with conservation, anything that saves energy or saves water, technically could be qualified. Also the on-site generation. When we say repurposing, we're seeing quite a few transactions where you have a building that was maybe office buildings and there's a surplus of office buildings, but there is a shortage of affordable housing. And so office buildings could be repurposed under PACE to have a different purpose like multifamily housing. That's a much deeper renovation, but that is also a part of the renovation process. PACE can also be used for new construction. Um, when we're looking at PACE for new construction, we are looking at building measures that are above the building code. And so in part of the process, there is a requirement for an energy audit on any of these structures. Every project requires an energy report or an energy audit, and it is within that audit that we determine what are the qualified improvements that can be funded with PACE. Additionally, we can do refinance. So on a refinance, we can refund back out of a transaction any qualified improvements that were done within the last 24 months. And so that's really a great opportunity if we run across somebody who has, if we run across somebody who has recently completed the program, but they didn't know that PACE existed, we can offer them the refinance piece. This is a busy, busy slide, and I almost hate to include it. It is a list that is not all inclusive, but it gives you an idea of the types of things that are eligible or potentially eligible under a PACE financing project. Like I said, typically what we see in our projects are lighting upgrades, the electricity to support those lighting upgrades, HVAC systems. Those are the primary improvements that we see, and building envelope. We can also do roofs. Those are highly efficient roofs can be included. And then a lot of the water conservation, which is a huge issue for us in the state of Texas, mostly have been related to low flow fixtures and trying to manage the demand of the water. So what's the basic criteria that the underwriting criteria for PACE program? There's several key factors. The first one is what we call the savings to investment ratio. In the state of Texas, there must be a savings to investment ratio that is greater than 1. And what that means is that the cost of the financing cannot exceed the energy savings that's being produced by the improvements. And these energy savings are calculated within the energy audit, and then they are verified by an independent third party, and that must be a licensed Texas PE. This is unique to the state of Texas. It is it is it is sorry, it is a factor that comes into play that acts to secure and protect everybody involved in the transaction. The loan to value. So PACE financing can fund up to 25% of the CAD value, or if there is an appraisal, we can actually fund up to 35%. The term of the loan is dictated and based on the useful life of the financing measures. And so it is the combined useful life in a weighted value of that. Typically, what we're seeing is 20 to 30 years on the term. And then the final criteria that I'm going to highlight is actually mortgage lender consent. If there is a mortgage on the process, the PACE program does require that that senior lender consent to the financing. This is because the assessment that is being used to securitize this financing is a lien position that they must acknowledge and agree to. And so those are the four basic underwriting criteria involved in PACE. So we talk about a little bit about lender consent, and I'm just going to share with you, like you would think, well, why should a senior lender want to consent to a PACE transaction if the lien position is a priority to theirs? There's a couple of reasons. The main reasons is because this is an assessment, the local government could only collect the past due amount. So in a worst case scenario, the only thing that comes due is the current year's assessment payment. The entire PACE assessment does not come forward in a worst case scenario. Additionally, senior lender stays in control even if there's a default on the installment. Additionally, the PACE assessment, as I mentioned before, must be less than the savings over the life. So this is a factor that improves the NOI for the borrower as well as their IRR. The property value asset increases. By making these improvements, the value of the asset increases. The cost of capital decreases, which offers a better debt service coverage for the borrower, which makes their operating position stronger. And additionally, the senior lender has the option to actually escrow future assessment payments. And this is sort of a little bit of a safety net for them where they could maybe escrow 1 year of payments to ensure that if there's a problem that they have coverage. On the opportunity side, PACE lenders will bring business to the consenting lenders. This is a back and forth referral kind of opportunity. There are potential new deposits, and it also allows the senior lender to retain their client, which is of paramount importance to senior lenders across the board. I talked about these things kind of already, but operational costs are reduced and the projects are getting funded, which limits the amount of senior lender risk. And it also is possible that you could receive CRA credit for this as a senior lender, depending on where the location is. And you also finally have the ability to create parameters or requirements within the lender consent document. So you can cap out the maximum amount of PACE component if you want to, or put other parameters within that lender consent. So you do retain control and you do have some ability to handle that. So property owner benefits. This is a very powerful graphic because this is really what is the power of PACE. It's whereby with conventional debt, the repayment happens all up front. And so the utility savings is spread out over time, but the payment would be due right at the beginning. As you look at the Texas PACE example, the utility savings are spread out over the life of the asset, and the repayment matches those savings. So if you look at the yellow bar at the bottom, you actually repay over time, which means that it's lower actual monthly obligations, and it can definitely improve your cash flow as you're working through this. So let's look at PACE by the numbers. This is the activity of the Texas PACE Authority. As I mentioned, we are administrator for PACE programs across the state of Texas. And as of last week, we are overseeing 109 PACE programs in cities and counties across Texas. That represents about 80% of the population of Texas. We've completed 95 projects, and we are at $540 million invested through this program. You can also see the energy savings are impressive, and we're super proud of our results to date and look forward to driving more results across the board. So now I'm going to kind of talk about a few real life examples that will help drive home what PACE is and how it works. So the B&B Theaters, which if you are from the city of Red Oak, you are going to be familiar with this facility. This was completed under a PACE project. The assessment for this project was $6.4 million. And the savings that they invested in were lighting and electrical, HVAC, envelope, and of course, water saving fixtures. Here's another project that was completed in 2024, the Swixen Hotel. And this is Swixen Hotel 2. You can do multiple assessments on a property. And this is an example of that. The first Swixen Hotel assessment was actually, I think, $39 million. And so they did a major first enhancement. And then as they worked through the project, they realized that they had left some money on the table. And so they came back and asked for another 8.5 million in a second assessment. And with this, they funded the lighting and electrical improvements for that hotel. This is a recent project that just closed in the city of Texas, or city of Texas, state of Texas, city of Houston. And I put this in here because it's a very unique example of what I think could be patterned in other communities. This was a underutilized older hotel. And what they're doing is they are converting it or repurposing it into a multifamily workforce housing model. The investment from a PACE standpoint is $4 million. They are putting in new lighting, they're putting in a solar array, they are also adding HVAC, water efficiency, and building envelope into this project. And this one just closed last week, so it will be exciting to see the outcome of these improvements once it's completed. And like I said, I really believe this is a model for how we can repurpose and reutilize some assets that are currently underutilized to fill a gap that we desperately need. So this is another small project. So typically PACE projects are on the larger side. By larger side, I mean 2 million and above. But we do have some examples of smaller transactions. And this is one that was done in Medina County in Castroville. And it was an older building in a downtown area that they updated the HVAC, the lighting, the envelope, and then they employed plumbing and water conservation measures. This was a $390,000 project. And it was a group. There were actually 3 similar projects in this community that were done at the same time or close to the same time. And this was very exciting for the Castroville community, and it really made an impact. But it shows you how it can be flexible. It can be utilized to reinvigorate downtown areas. It can be used to repurpose assets that are currently underutilized. And there are many communities that we serve where that's a priority, and trying to figure out how to use PACE for that is something we're continually looking at. Here's another example, San Marcos Premium Outlet. This was down in San Marcos and Hays County. The thing that's interesting about this is this owner actually owns multiple shopping centers across the state of Texas. And on this day, he closed 3 transactions on the same day to make improvements to 3 different outlet malls that he owns across the state. And the reason we're able to do that is because we have created, along with Keeping Pace in Texas, we've created a set of consistent documents. It's called Pace in a Box. And everything that is required is boilerplated so that you can have consistency across markets. And so this was a really cool example where they invested $1.8 million via of an assessment, and they addressed HVAC, low flow fixtures, irrigation, and drought resistant landscaping things, interior and exterior LED, and building envelope. And here's another example from the city of Dallas. And some of you may be familiar with this building, the Continental Gin Company. It is a retail office space that had an assessment in the amount of 5.2 million. And under this assessment, they included lighting, HVAC, envelope, roofs, elevators. Now, elevators is something that people don't typically think about, but old elevators are a huge user of energy. And so we are seeing some elevators being incorporated into the projects that we're working on. And then the solar PVC, the rooftop, you can really see the solar on top of the building in this image. And so we were excited to be a part of that. This one had a very complex capital stack. And I'm just going to show this with you briefly. So you can see that PACE can be blended in with other financing. So this project had equity, it had federal investor equity, it had state equity, it had a TIF, and then the PACE lender at 5.2. And then the local Frontier State Bank did 12.5 million. And then there was a sponsored development loan for 3.2 million. And you can just see how complicated the capital stack can be. It doesn't have to be this complicated, but in this case, to make this project work, this developer really needed all of these sources of capital blended together to make the financing structure work and for the project to cash flow. So we were excited to play a part in that and providing a significant portion at 14% of the development. So in summary, let's just look at what PACE is. It's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win for everyone. Property owners lower their utility bills, they get energy independence, their property value increases. The contractors, they get a source of business, and it actually helps to drive hiring, and it helps to really improve the best practices in keeping up on all the technology. Lenders, clearly there's new loans and there's absolute opportunity to develop projects. The state of Texas, it helps the state of Texas by helping with grid issues, demand issues, preserving our very precious natural resources. And then from a community standpoint, the increased economic development jobs improves the building structures, and it just makes properties more attractive, and that's good for everyone. I want to touch on just briefly, we do offer a service provider training. So if you are watching today and you are interested in being listed as a service provider on our website, we offer free training, and this is the link to the training. The information at the bottom, this is sort of the route that you find it. But if you click on that link, you would be able to go to our training. Take the training. It's an online course at your own pace. Once you pass the training, then we can list you as a service provider. And then as individuals come to us looking for who they can utilize, then they will have your information and they can reach out to you directly. Again, these are my contacts here. If there are any questions after the presentation, by all means, feel out to reach out to me, and I will be happy to go over things with you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Dr. Valerie Shoup and let her initiate her presentation.
Okay, can everybody see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yep, it's perfect. This looks
Okay,
perfect.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, so PACE can seem overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about, as a PACE service provider, what is the step-by-step process to go through to start a PACE project. So if you're considering a PACE project, okay, what do I do first? Well, we're here today to understand the basics of PACE, understand how to plan for PACE, and understand the data required to start a project, understand the importance of the data, and understand how to evaluate the project and how to reality check your numbers. So this presentation today will make PACE in a box very easy for you. So, as a property owner, you have to decide what are your desired outcomes and goals and your vision for the property. Now, what's interesting is I'm working on a project now that they asked me to come and do an energy assessment, where in reality the project needed the building needed a condition assessment. So I went over and above and helped. Create a condition assessment because there were some things that needed to be in the done in the project that wasn't just energy related. So if you once you hire an energy auditor to go through your building, they'll fill out the PACE form to ensure that you have a payback. And then you have the big picture. Okay, so you say, okay, I know what I need to do now. I need to do all these various ECMs, but sometimes there's additional work that needs to be done to firm up the ECMs, whether it be engineering or some additional work with service providers before you can actually, get a detailed scope of work. So then you work on getting your detailed scope of work and you get the bids. Once you have your bids, you can create a budget and go to the bank with a detailed budget. Now, the bank will hire an ITPR, which is a third party reviewer, to look at the project and confirm that the project will, in fact, pay itself back. And then the paperwork goes to Texas PACE Authority for review. And once they've approved it, you can close the loan and implement the project. Now, are they all this complicated? No. So if the project is a large project with multiple ECMs, you really need to have an ASHRAE Level 2 report available to prove up that you will actually make those savings. Now, if you have a smaller project, say you're only doing lighting, then it may not require all the detail of a larger project. You can just have somebody look at the lighting and estimate the savings there. But as an owner, somebody gives you numbers, you really need to know how to reality check those numbers. So anyway, you also want to be sure you're getting the most out of your project. So don't just jump right in and do your project and blow and go, because you really need to plan up front so you don't miss out on potential savings. So you should check, are there grants available for this project? What kind of utility rebates are available? What kind of tax incentives are there for your energy conservation measures? Do you have a good tax accountant on your team that can help you understand tax incentives and equipment depreciation? And honestly, you need a good project manager. If you yourself are not a big numbers person, it's great to have a project manager who's aware of the funding mechanisms that will be of help to you. So these are the type of things that you need to think about so that you can make the most out of your project. So say you have a larger project. What's going to happen is your energy assessment provider is going to ask for at least 12 months of energy bills. They'll look at things like cooling degree days, days per year the property's occupied, number of building occupants, gross square feet. So there's quite a bit of information they'll need up front. Now, how this is one of the pages that helps you reality check your number. So when you look at your utility bills, you can go to EnergyStar.gov and compare your annual utility bills to what the average or the national median is to know, hey, am I using a lot of energy? Am I above or below the national median? And that median, and that gives you a place to start. And then also, sometimes people will say, well, to be sure you get your actual energy savings, you need to have a baseline year because say somebody tells you you're going to save this much energy, but the very next year is a lot cooler or a lot hotter, the amount of energy you save um, can be different based on the cooling and heating degree days. So you will, before you get upset and say, I'm not saving energy, you need somebody to compare the cooling and heating degree days to see if the difference in what you were promised versus what you're saving really makes sense. And then what you want to do is baseline your energy use, and then you look at your load profile in your building to see, okay, when am I spending the most energy? And just be sure that your load profile, matches how you actually are expending energy and what makes sense. So you can go to EnergyStar.gov and actually compare your building to other buildings so you can get an idea how you're performing. And so I like to have at least two sources of energy comparison. So here's a second source of way of doing it. Usually, HVAC, you might be 32 to 40%, lighting 25%. So this is just kind of a rule of thumb. And the reason I'm telling you this is if you're a service provider, say for instance, HVAC says, oh, I'm going to save you 50% of your energy bill just by putting controls on the HVAC. Well, this tells you, hey, my HVAC probably isn't even 50% of the load in my building. And if it was, and I save 50% of that, oh, I'm really only saving 25% of my energy bill. So it's good to have these data comparison sources so that you know what's going to really happen on your project. So what are your potential savings? Well, these are just kind of some rules of thumb. Lighting, you can save 50 to 75%, depending on what you have existing in your building. HVAC, 20 to 35%. Of course, that depends on what's existing in the building. Water, 50 to 75%. And then other areas include manufacturing processes, and things that have to do with your building envelope. They all affect your energy savings. Okay. So say, for instance, you say, okay, what do I want to do first? Well, if you do lighting and it's 25% of your bill and you save 60% of the energy, the total off of your bill is 15%. If HVAC is 40% and you're going to save 30% of the energy, then your savings on your energy is 12%, and so on. So what's important about knowing these kind of generalities and rules of thumb is so that you can reality check your number. This is what it's all about, is being able to reality check your numbers and make sure that the numbers you're being given actually make sense. Okay, so here's an example. If you have a 30,000 square foot building, you can go to EnergyStar.gov and look up some information on that building. So a standard office is 200 kBTU per square foot squared, and you can convert that to kilowatt hours per gross square foot. Okay, and then you multiply that by the square footage of your building and see, am I higher or lower than that number? And then you can go back to the pie chart and get ideas about, based on what you find out, this is how much energy I'm using, what can I really save? And then if lighting's 25% of the load, for instance, the old standard watts is 2 watts per square foot. Now it's going to be 1. So you go through all this math and you can rewatch this online, take screenshots, and do the math yourself on your building to see what makes sense. So we know based on this example that our savings, you can estimate what your savings can be based on using these standard metrics. And here's just another example of HVAC. If you say my building's 350 foot square per ton of cooling, and I can potentially cut 8.9% from HVAC upgrades. This is basically the math you can go through to determine how many kilowatt hours will you actually save, or based on what they tell you your service provider says your savings, you can look at it and say, hey, does this make sense? So anyway, in this particular example, you can calculate your HVAC load and figure out between what numbers it really ought to be. So in summary, for this particular example, you've been able to calculate what your HVAC load is between the savings, min and max, lighting load, min and max, and your lighting savings and HVAC savings. So the moral of the story is when you're shown savings greater than 25% with only two energy conservation measures, you should be sure your numbers are accurate. Okay, so in summary, what you really want to do is have a good plan up front. Plan your project, get your team together. Who do I need on this team? I need, a tax accountant. I need a good project manager who can help me get these rebates. I need somebody who can help implement this. I need to be sure I have good contractors. So you want to really plan up front and be sure that you have a whole team together that works together to be sure that you can make the savings and make as much money on this project as you want. Now, some tax accountants are not, they don't know about the energy piece. In fact, my tax accountant that I use for my own personal taxes, he doesn't really understand all these energy tax credits that you can get. And also, like if you're a not-for-profit, some of the tax credits you might have to have one of your service provider take the tax credit and then rebate you part of that tax credit. So these are all things that you need to have the right people on your team with your tax accountant, your project manager, your ITPR, and somebody from Texas PACE Authority to help you with all this. I mean, the resources are there to help you with your project. It's really not all that complicated if you just go step by step by step. And when you have a service provider come in and make big promises, you need to know to reality check your numbers. And then once everybody's comfortable, you can go ahead and implement your project. So I hope that wasn't too quick. I didn't really want to get in depth with all the math. I can do that if you have a project that you're thinking about and help you reality check your projects. And feel free to contact me anytime. I'm Dr. Valerie Shoup. This is my email address and my phone number if you have any questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. That was a wonderful, informative presentation. And I think just to reiterate, there are a lot of steps in PACE. There can be a lot of steps, but the key to successfully navigating a PACE project is that to know that you have resources available between service providers like Valerie, who are experts in providing this information, between the Texas PACE Authority and all of the resources that we have both in personnel, but also on our website. There are a lot of resources within our website where you can go and do some self-studies and look at projects and get information. There is a lot of information available to you as you're trying to navigate your way. The PACE lenders are very helpful. You have community representatives like the chamber who are also informed on PACE and can help guide you. And so the main takeaway that I would give you is that, you have a team available to you. And it's our primary mission to help as many people that want to take advantage of PACE to have the opportunity to take advantage of PACE. And I think with the resources that you have available, if you are interested in doing a PACE project, there are plenty of people to help you. With that, that concludes the formal presentation. We do have a few minutes left. If there were any specific questions you want us to address, please drop them into the chat, and we'll be happy to address those for you. We'll just hang out for a few minutes and see if there are any questions. And
I see a question about a historical building. And so what I wanted to mention on that is that I go to the commercial building energy consumption database, and I baseline the building based on that. Excuse me.
I see that Stacy has her hand. I'm going to see if I can allow you to talk. Go ahead, Stacy. What's your question?
That was the question. The building was built back in like 1910, 1920s.
Mhm.
So that's why when I say historical, I'm like, because we're in the process of doing a building in the 10th Street Historical District.
Mhm.
And so that's why I wanted to, and we are a nonprofit. So that's why I wanted to ask that specific question, because the data is really important before we, as a nonprofit, before we make a step to say, is this something we want to do? Will this be worth it? And so, Valeria, I'll probably reach out to you via email
Right.
to have a more in-depth conversation about it, because we want to do solar on the building. And it's like, is it worth it? Or is it just, I don't want to do something that's just the thing to do. So I'll reach out to you if that's okay.
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, older buildings where there is no data. The good thing is the federal government provides an energy consumption database. So I'll pick the numbers off of there.
Okay.
And then I also look at what type of systems are in the building.
It's nothing there.
Okay, well, if there's nothing there, then what you do is you take the commercial building database and you say, okay, in the date this building was built, this is what the energy consumption would be. And then you go forward from there. Okay, what do I want to do to the building? And then you can also look at, like, if you're putting in HVAC, if I put in a code compliant HVAC, this will be the amount of energy efficiency, but I'm going to put in HVAC that's higher than code. So here's additional savings. So
Okay.
it does take a lot of iterations, but in all my projects, I calculate everything 3 ways. So
Okay.
nobody can say you didn't tell me. You know what I mean? I try to calculate it multiple ways and say, okay, here's the worst case savings, here's the best case savings.
Okay, all right then. And we don't anticipate starting construction until 2020, January 2026, January, February 2026. So we have time. So it's not
Oh,
like
yeah.
we have a lot of time, but I like the iterations and I like the data, so we can make an informed decision. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like about you do need to be sure you have plenty of time because, like, for instance, I did a water audit on a building that they haven't taken out the loan yet, but I did a water audit on it and they've already applied for the rebates and they haven't taken out the loan yet. So it's really good to have that time up front so that you can try to achieve all the savings that are available.
Yeah, and I think the other point on top of that is by starting up front with a professional like Valerie, you're ensuring that you don't go down the wrong path and don't waste time on or money on things that don't have value. And so that you're right on track, Stacy, with starting out with, let me make sure this makes sense before we just jump on
Right.
board. And that's the value of having, the team around you. If you go to our website, we have multiple nonprofits that we've done projects for. So nonprofit is not a challenge. If there is any debt on the property, lender consent is the other piece that's a big kind of front end conversation. You have the figuring out what your project is and whether or not it makes sense. And then before you go any further, if you have any debt, then finding out if the senior lender will consent. And we at the PACE Authority can also help guide that conversation. If you're not sure how to have that conversation with a lender, that's part of what we offer also.
Okay, perfect, because this is a new area for us, and I don't want to walk into an area that we are not familiar with. And just to have someone there to hold our hand would be great. So, um, Valerie, shoot you an email later on today, and so we can set up a
Perfect.
time
Thank
to
you,
chat
Susan.
and things like that. Thank you so much.
Sure. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Okay, not seeing any other questions. I will go ahead and conclude this presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to hopefully working with you in the future.